Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. It is Sunday. It's about 1:15 as I'm recording this video. I had a very interesting week. I managed to get myself booked on Sky News. It was just that happened because somebody I know who booked me on something else. It was called TNT. They no longer exist. He was a producer there, but he said, "Hey, do you want to go on Sky?" And I was like, "Oh, okay." And so I did. So that's how that happened. Thank you to Gabriella, the Power Hour people, and thank you to Moose on the Loose who put me in the video also, who used snippets of me, and Portuguese Pie. Thank you very much. So today, oh, and one other thing about Moose. He's doing this amazing flowcharts, and flowcharts are really important, these connections to people. Like, because do you remember when the Balenciaga story came out? Balenciaga used children and used kind of very awful, almost satanic imagery in their ads with children and very kind of gross things. And I did a video on that too. But somebody in a chart put a link to like Balenciaga and model scouts and talent scouts and celebrities and people, and there was an Epstein connection in there. And then it showed a connection to Selma Hayek's husband, this French guy who's he's a billionaire and an art dealer. And then that guy actually knows and sells art to the Podesta family. And so this web is created of these very powerful people in that kind of fashion, entertainment, art world industry. But that kind of web is also important to create in this world where you're putting together Bloomberg, G-Fans, COP26, Trump, the Kushners, the this, the that, the Palantir people. Like, the web is important. And that is the job of the news. You know, that should be the job of the news. You assign a reporter to go dig down that lane, work with an editor, work with a producer, and tell the people how everything is connected. That's if you really want people to know the truth. If you really want to pull the wool over people's eyes, you do what Global News, CTV, and CBC are doing. And I got to tell you, for Moose on the Loose to put this flow chart together, he is outshining the networks. And basically it's him and his cat, putting this information together, doing the work that the network news should be doing. I just want to say what a bizarre week it was. I mean, Carney released, his sort of mandate, which seems more conservative, not mandate, but he talked about some things he'd like to do, which seem more conservative than ever. King Charles is going to fly in, oh my God, the king and queen, to deliver Canada's speech from the throne. I mean, talk about friends in high places, Carney. I mean, my gosh. Oh, also, Damien Couric from River-Crowfoot gave up his seat and apparently almost, jeopardized he jeopardized his pension or to give up his seat for Pierre. Now, we've all seen Damien in committee, and he's a very strong leader, and that shows a lot of integrity for him to do that. And I think that Pierre showed a lot of humility in accepting that, and graciously accepting that. And this is where we're at, because in Pierre's own writing of Carleton, there were 91 people on this ridiculously long ballot that you'd have to fold, I don't know how many times, like when you have to make origami to cast your ballot, for goodness sake. And Mario Zelaya did a really great video on what's behind that, because that is shocking to lose your seat after 20 years. What the hell actually happened there? So Mario explains it.
That's brand new. I'm going to shrink myself down to size so you can see that new area that was integrated with his. This is what it looked like in 2021 when they had the 44th election. And I'm going to explain all this red in just a second, and it's all going to make sense. So Pierre's area, labeled as number 88 over here, that's what he had the whole time. Before, it was integrated with this. And everything I'm taking is publicly available, so check it yourself. But this is how much he won last time, a 15% margin. Just to remind you, that's the area that he used to represent. Before that came into the picture in 2023. Yes, the adjustment was done recently. Let me put it to you this way. Pierre Poilievre's riding, which had always been conservative and he held for 20 years, was merged with a heavy liberal region. An area altogether that had grown by nearly 50% due to immigration.
But I was so distracted by voting. We've seen a lot of videos of votes and, ballots in parking lots, whether those are filled ballots or empty ballots or the early voting ballots. I don't know, there's bags of ballots going everywhere, right? And the MCGA, he videotaped somebody taking ballots home, but the guy that he interviewed, if you watch the video, was very forthcoming. He's like, no, 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 these are empty, and then a supervisor will come and pick them up, and then they'll go somewhere else. It's like, what are you doing? None of this makes any sense. It's all very hickledy pickledy all over the place, and you expect us to feel confident. And you can hear the MCGA guy calling Elections Canada, getting on the phone, talking to people, actually doing what a journalist would do, what a reporter should be doing in the news. I mean, I really commend him for, he really thoroughly asked the questions, and he was very professional yet tough. You can tell he's a bit of a tough guy. You don't want to mess with him. And I mean, good kudos to him for doing that and trying to get some answers, because all we know is we put our ballot in the box, and then what? Then what happens? Then at when the polls close here at 7 o'clock, then they shut the doors, and then they start counting, and then what? So that part, I talked to somebody who was a scrutineer, and I'm gonna play that interview for you at the end of this broadcast. So stick around for that, because she kind of explains what she saw. Because for me, having worked in the news, this is what you would normally see. So you see these graphics here. This is what everybody watches, right? This company that does this is called Bannister Lake. I think they recently sold themselves to Ross Video. Ross is also, they make TV switchers. Like, these are, anybody in the TV business will recognize these names, right? So this is what we do. We use this company, and I'm going to show you a little bit more information about it. And they get fed the information, and then we put that on TV. But the entire time that I worked at Global doing this type of thing, I was always like, how is it even happening this fast? It's supposed to be like real time. They're giving you the information in real time. But there's a piece of the puzzle that is missing. How is that being fed to this software? Right? It's computer software working on RSS or whatever. So we use that, or working on with other websites, to tabulate this in real time. You can use Bannister Lake for sports and things like that too. Let me put it back up to show you, right? So I have used this in the newsroom on elections many times, and I never thought anything of it. The only thing I thought is, boy, we get the numbers pretty fast, and we have this font guy that's sort of overseeing it, and then he'll tell us such and such is in, as such and such is in, and away we go announcing the numbers. And I think what happens is, maybe some of the counting is counted, and then you tell the actual party in the riding, you report to the party in the riding, and that's how these numbers are going. But I honestly do not know, even having worked at Global, how we're getting the information fed to us. And something else, the scrutineer I talked to, she didn't really know either. But let's watch a little bit of these dudes in action.
We're seeing the Conservatives do well. I mean, even if they do drop back down to 8, they're doing fine.
I think if we would have asked the Conservative campaign if they came out of Atlantic Canada with 8 seats tonight, they would have been thrilled.
One other thing, like in my riding, we had somebody named Zoe, and we had Paul Lambert, and it was actually Zoe, what's her name, that won. And I couldn't tell you anything about her. I was, and look at these people here on the side of the screen, this liberal person, Diab and Batherson and Tench, and all these local people running in their ridings. We can't tell you a thing about them. We don't know who they are. And so we're voting for the party, right? We just click whoever the Conservative person is, but we don't actually know too much about them. And I have asked for interviews from Barbara Ball, who seemed to really want to do one, but you have to go through the office first. I asked Aaron Gunn for an interview, who actually got back to me and seemed to want to do one, but I am not sure they let you. I've asked Conservative Party members in South Surrey, and the one guy was like, oh, I can't. Like, I've asked and I've reached out to Chandra Arya for an interview, and their people didn't get back to me. My local guy, I know him. I could probably get him to do an interview, but I don't know if they're allowed to. And that's like, if we don't know who you are, if you don't get your message out next time and start talking to podcasters and people like me to tell me who you are and what you're about, we don't really know who you are. And I find that super annoying. So whether this is a decision that these parties make, the Liberal Party and the Conservatives, whether this is a Jenny Byrne decision, that's Pierre's ex-girlfriend and the campaign manager, she better sort that out next time. Let me show you a little bit about how Bannister Lake works.
Please feel free to submit your questions using the Q&A tools.
Since '94, in fact. Now, you may not have heard of us, but you've likely seen some of our work. We're the behind-the-scenes guys helping broadcasters with their real-time data needs. From news, sports scores, social media, elections, polls and results, weather, and so much more. Odds are you've seen our data even if you didn't know it. In today's world, real-time data has never been more important. Audiences everywhere are watching from every kind of device, and they're relying on getting news and information that is fluid because, well, life changes fast. It might look like with all its parts to better understand how Chameleon is a must-have for your production team. During the planning of an election production, Chameleon can provide historical data from past elections for analysis. It also provides or allows producers to enter candidate biographies, party logos, and headshots. Election data providers will have live race data on election night. In the production studio, the operator has at their fingertips any and all of the pre-built playlists being done by the Decision Desk team. So they don't have to think about them. They just have to be ready to take the director's cue. As mentioned earlier, Chameleon supports the output of multiple platforms, allowing you to simultaneously broadcast in HD, SDI, NDI, and HTML5 even. And in those cases that you have a system that can actually read XML or RSS, you can provide your election data to those systems as well.
Okay, and so there's a piece of the puzzle that's missing. And the piece of the puzzle is when we cast our vote and they get counted up, there's no computer in the room. So how are we getting that information out, supposedly in real time, to the TV networks? And now all the podcasters who are like, you can stream CTV. CTV is using Bannister Lake. Global is using Bannister Lake. So we're all the podcasters who are now live streaming, Juno News, National Telegraph, Sunshine Baby, everybody was live streaming. We're using all the same numbers. But the piece of the puzzle is missing is how are those numbers getting fed to the software? I worked at Global. I would put that software on the television. Okay. That was part of my job. And I can't even tell you how it's being fed. So I asked a scrutineer. But one thing I wanted to know, when you count and you count it all up and it'll be like X amount of votes for this person, X for this, that number gets sent where? Who gets that?
Well, each scrutineer who was there would send it to their representative, to who the party that they're representing.
But how do they send it? Do they call the person? Is there a computer?
We were taking photos. So every hour on the hour, they were going around to each polling station and handing over the paperwork, right?
Yeah.
So you could, as they're crossing off people's names, so you can see basically who's voted, who hasn't. So if they needed, some 85-year-old, hey, hello, we see you haven't voted yet. Do you need a ride? And then I would send that into head office. And then when it was all done, I had my final tally. And that also, you take a photo of it and you send it into head office.
When you say send it in, how do you send it in? You text somebody or?
Yeah, just texted it. And then when the election, then I had all the paperwork and I took that paperwork and physically brought it to my party's head office.
Why are they getting pictures? They're getting you as a scrutineer to take a picture?
Yes.
And send it to Elections Canada?
No, I sent it to the party.
Oh, you send it into the party via a text and a phone picture?
Yes.
Did you find it
And then
odd?
I also have those photos still in my phone. Like I
Oh,
could share them with
yeah, because
anybody.
it's your personal phone. And so do you assume that at the Conservative Party or wherever you happen to send, or Liberal Party, then they enter that into the computer and then the computer feeds the software?
Yes, that's my assumption.
But we don't know. We don't, because from my experience working in news, we use a certain type of software and that gets fed by whoever, I guess the party, and then we put real-time stuff on TV. And that's always the piece that's missing for me. Who's feeding the numbers? So
Yeah.
whereabouts were you? Like where were you volunteering?
I was at Aldergrove Secondary, ACSS. I thought it was weird because now I have this in my phone.
That is
So I was Joe Citizen. I didn't get paid, nothing, and I'm walking around with this information in my phone.
And based on what you saw, was it the mix that we say? Did you see lots of conservative or lots of, like, what did you kind of see? If just by eyeballing, who was voting in what way?
It was definitely more conservative.
So I think I got that part, that you had to take the pictures of that 10 per hour and send it. And then the counting of the actual ballots at the end of the night, you counted it. You could be like, okay, yeah, this is right. It's 80 this, 50 this, blah, blah, blah. How those numbers get to the media, how do they get there?
That I don't know.
Isn't that funny? So all those numbers got counted. And then you're sitting there looking at all the ballots, and then there's no computer in the room.
Nope.
So how do those numbers, when they say, 50 for Paul Lambert, blah, blah, blah for Zoe, how do they get, you having volunteered cannot say that how the party gets the number and how we put that on the news?
Nope, I don't know.
Isn't that amazing?
It sort of reminds me of the George W. election.
The hanging Chad.
It's like, well, we think it's leaning this way, but all of a sudden it got called and that was it.
Yeah, like, so basically that's a big problem. If everybody's counting the ballots and you're in a locked room and you count everything, that information then has to go to the media. That information has to go to Elections Canada, that has to go to the party, but you don't know how it's getting there.
Nope. And I also asked the guy who was in charge when I got there, I said, okay, so, I've never done this before. So we have our ballot boxes. What happens when they get full? What do we do? And he says, we just shake them and they'll go down. They should never get full. And I said, okay, so we had early voting here. What happened to those ballot boxes?
Right.
And he said, those went to Elections Canada. Like, okay.
Yeah, and were they all counted and amalgamated? 7 million votes were voted early. So where are they? Who counted them and when did they count them?
I don't know. We didn't count the early ballots. We didn't count the mail-ins. All we counted was the people who came into that polling station on election day. That's it.
And that's it. Okay. And
so the NDP wouldn't know. They would have no numbers because nobody there was representing them. Green wouldn't have any numbers. Who else did we have? Anyways, but there were 4 guys for Conservatives and then me for an independent. That's
a big piece of the puzzle that's missing, because I can tell you from working at Global News, we use software. That software is fed and then we put that on the news. And I never knew where we were getting those numbers from. I was assuming people were counting and then some giving it to Elections Canada and then they were giving it to us. But it's like, you don't even know that part. Where is it going to go to the party first, then to Elections Canada? And do you believe they can count everything accurately that quickly so they can call it at 10 past 7? Oh, you do?
Well, no, not at 10 past 7. We didn't start until quarter after 7. It was at 8:30 that we finished counting. And I said, okay, kids, I got to go. Like, people were still milling around. And I was like, I got a friend waiting at my house. I got to go.
Yeah. Okay.
So I don't know what happened after that. But like I said, there was nobody from Green. There was nobody from Liberal. There was nobody from NDP. So great. Where did that information go to?
Yeah.
I don't have a clue.
Yeah, you don't have a clue.
I still have copies of everything I took pictures of.
That's interesting. But I guess, like, at the end of the day, we counted, and then you don't know what happened, how that information gets to the people. That like
No.
that's you what you do. That's insane. If there's especially if there's no computer in the room.
Yeah. So where does it go? I don't.
Does
freaking
somebody call it? You never saw somebody call it on the phone. Hey, you like, does somebody make a phone call in front of you?
know. No.
No. So what do
No,
you
in fact,
think?
we were told not to be on our phones any more than we had to be,
Mm.
and not to discuss anything to do with politics. So I said at one point, I said, I find it interesting that in the States, they don't have to produce ID in order to vote. And I was told right away, we don't discuss politics in here. And I'm like, it's American politics. It's totally different. And it's just an opinion about weird that, why don't anytime I voted, I've always had to show ID.
Yeah.
So I just found it interesting that they don't do that in the US. No, we're not discussing politics here.
Oh, okay.
And I was being very careful not to show the back of my phone because I have an F. Carney sticker on and an F. Trudeau sticker.
Yeah. I just
I'm
find that
not trying to sway anybody. But,
that's right. You saw what you saw. You counted at the end of the night, and you've told me now 4 or 5 times that you don't know where the numbers went after that.
No.
Which is staggering. Not even an elections officer is like, okay, let me make a phone call. Okay, we got 75 for this guy, 56 for that guy. There was none of that. No. So there you go. It's clear as mud. The answer is she doesn't know. That's a big piece of the puzzle that is missing. She never saw a computer. She never saw, they're not even making a phone call. If you want me to vote and you say that every vote counts, then make every vote count. Because if you're calling it early before all the votes are even counted, because you have enough numbers to make a safe decision, I get that. I don't care. Count all the votes, count all the early votes. What happened to the early votes? Did they all get amalgamated in these total tallies that we put on TV? I don't even know. I mean, you leave me a comment. I'm sure a lot of people were scrutineers. And a lot of people, because Portuguese Pie put this in his video, that a lot of people brought their own pens because that was going on social media to bring your own pen. A pen or pencil, even if it was pencil, nobody's really going to erase all that stuff anyway, but bring your own pen. And then the guy on a Facebook post said that was working there that he never saw any of the ballots with the pens. So where were all the pens? Where were all those ballots? So this has got to be as transparent a process as possible. We are the voters. Okay, everybody, if you like my stuff, please come back. Spend more time with me. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. It's free after all. Let me see if I can get up to 15,000 subscribers by the end of May. That would be wonderful. Yeah. Thank you for spending time with me today and listening to all my ranting and raving. And I will catch you in the next video. I'll talk to you later in the week. All right. Bye-bye.